Tonight on Evening Edition, a local Navy SEAL charged with war crimes pleads for his freedom. What happened during the hearing and why the judge is refusing to release him from custody. Plus, the long-awaited Mueller report is out. We look at the results of the investigation and what it means for the president. And with summer around the corner, how crews all over San Diego County are prepping for this year's wildfire season. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Thursday, April 18th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. After 2 years and more than $25 million of taxpayer money, the Mueller report is out. The redacted version of the 300-page document covers Russian meddling in the 2016 election, examines contacts between Russian representatives and the Trump campaign, and questions of obstruction of justice by President Trump. In the document, Mueller found 10 instances of possible obstruction of justice, but decided not to suggest charges because the findings were insufficient. Mueller ultimately determined the report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, but it also does not exonerate him. We asked Carol Lamb, a former U.S. attorney, about her thoughts on the report in the Attorney General's press conference before the release.
I was surprised that there was a press conference at all. I think it was unnecessary. I think it happened because it looked to me like it happened because the Attorney General was instructed by the White House to have a press conference to sort of put a positive spin on the report for the president. I was surprised at the amount of evidence that the special counsel found that the president really seemed to be either not just keeping facts from getting to the special counsel's attention or the public's attention, but actually encouraging the creation of evidence, instructing people who worked for him to write letters or memos saying certain things. That really disturbed me because that gets much closer to what I thought I heard Bill Barr saying in his confirmation hearing, which was that if the president were to tell somebody to, for example, lie or to destroy evidence, that would be a crime. I thought that there was evidence of that in the special counsel's report. Bob Mueller was very clear in the report about why there wasn't a recommendation for an obstruction of justice charge, and unlike the decision by Bill Barr and Rod Rosenstein, where they said their decision was not to bring charges, and that's aside from the Justice Department policy not to indict a sitting president, Bob Mueller was very clear that that was one of the reasons why they were not recommending obstruction of justice charges.
Members of San Diego's congressional delegation are also reacting to the report. Congressman Duncan Hunter tweeted his response from Yuma, Arizona, and Congressman Mike Levin talked to Midday Edition.
The Mueller report came out today. Who cares? There is no collusion. We know that. We also know that that's fake news.
You're not exonerated from obstruction of justice just because you didn't succeed. It's the intent to obstruct justice. And Mr. Mueller makes clear multiple times that there is a lot of intent, which means I think it does warrant further investigation from the Congress.
Congressional Democrats are requesting an unredacted version of the report. You can see more analysis on PBS NewsHour tonight at 7. A Navy SEAL charged with war crimes will not be released before his trial. This despite a tweet of support from the president. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh was at the hearing today.
SEAL Chief Eddie Gallagher was taken into custody September 11th, charged with a series of crimes, including killing a teenage ISIS fighter in his custody in Syria in 2017. His case has been picked up by a group of congressmen. March 30th, President Trump sent a tweet which helped get Gallagher moved from the brig to the Naval Hospital in San Diego. Gallagher's attorney, Timothy Palatori, was in court Thursday asking the judge to remove more of the restrictions.
There was no reason for him to be in the brig in the first place. Yeah, he is not a risk of flight. He's known about this investigation for months before he was arrested. He didn't run away.
The SEALs have limited him to a few floors in the barracks building. Judge Aaron Rue says he doesn't have the authority to overrule the SEALs. The judge did rule the amount of restrictions are the equivalent of remaining in jail. He asked Gallagher be given greater access to a computer and private phone line so he can better aid in his own defense. A handful of his supporters attended the hearing.
Well, it's better than the brig, but anything would be better than the brig. So he is able to have a room, but he cannot have any outside contact with the world without being supervised.
Prosecutors maintain that Gallagher was confined after making threats against fellow SEALs who are set to testify against him in his trial, which is scheduled for May 28th. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Thanks, Steve. A new report takes a tough look at San Diego's high inmate death rate. The report from The Guardian shows from February of this year to mid-March, 4 people died in San Diego jails. The deaths were due to suicides or a lack of medical attention. Data from the Bureau of Justice reveals from 2000 to 2007, San Diego had the second highest death rate of inmates in the state. And over the last decade, more than 135 inmates have died in San Diego jails. The majority of these deaths involved an inmate with a mental illness. Today, students at San Diego State University staged a demonstration. Organizers say the march is in response to recent acts targeting the Black Resource Center. Over the weekend, someone broke into the BRC and damaged TVs, computer monitors, and more. This vandalism comes on the heels of someone yelling a racial slur at students standing outside of the BRC. Students say they want the university to do more to make them feel safe and included.
1. Protect Black lives. 2. Protect Black people. 3. We want justice for Black people.
And also it just hurts all the people here, and it's just, you feel that wave of empathy where it's just like we want to be here to be able to absolve that pain and to grow together.
Today, San Diego State University stepped up security measures at the BRC. Our media partner, iNewsSource, has uncovered research violations at UC San Diego. A prominent eye doctor has been cited with violations that put patients at risk. Investigative data reporter Jill Castellano joins us with details of the report. Jill, you reviewed hundreds of internal audits from UC San Diego. Can you tell us about one report in particular that you say stood out?
Right, so my colleague Brad Racino and I have been looking through audits at UC San Diego, and the one that stood out to us is the only one we could find that has to do with a particular researcher at the university. His name is Dr. Kang Zhang, and he's an eye doctor studying macular degeneration, which is when people's eyes go bad in old age. And the audit found that he's had a number of really serious violations in his research that have gone on for years.
In your report, you state that the FDA sent a warning letter highlighting problems with Dr. Zhang's research. What were the concerns and what were the recommendations?
That warning letter is what prompted the audit that UC San Diego did. The warning letter found that for years, that one of the studies that Dr. Zhang did had some serious problems with it. And one of the biggest concerns was about who was enrolled in his study. So he was doing an eye study on people with advanced eye disease and enrolling them and injecting them with a drug every month that was trying to help reduce their symptoms. That drug had some serious potential side effects, including eye hemorrhages and, in rare cases, cataracts or even blindness. The problem is that he was enrolling people in the study who didn't qualify, whose eye disease was not advanced enough, and so they shouldn't have been enrolled and should not have been exposed to that level of risk.
And do we know if any of the patients were harmed during this research?
Well, I can't really speak to that right now, but I can tell you that we've uncovered some interesting documents just this morning, and if you keep your eyes out on iNewsSource.org, you'll probably see some upcoming stories about that.
And what do we know about Dr. Zhang's career?
Well, we know that he has a long career and that he's been in this field for a long time. He got his degree at Harvard University Medical School, and when he came to UC San Diego, he started bringing in millions and millions of dollars for his research studies. He speaks at symposiums around the world. So this is not someone who's off on the sidelines. He's a very well-known, well-respected researcher, and yet he still has these problems in his research.
And Jill, why does it matter that Dr. Zhang, for instance, didn't complete training to work with human embryonic stem cells when you report he's very accomplished in his field?
So we interviewed 5 ethics experts for this story, and they make it clear that all of these rules are here for a reason. They're not just here for any old reason. They're here to protect human research subjects from harm. These are people, millions of people every year, who come forward and expose themselves to some level of risk. Maybe that's potentially getting their information exposed, or it could be having an issue with a drug and having some sort of side effect. And the point of all of these rules and all of these trainings is to make sure that when researchers are working with them, that they're doing the best they can to minimize those risks.
And how has UC San Diego responded to these violations?
Well, we haven't gotten a full response from them. We have not been able to interview Dr. Kang Zhang. We have gotten a couple statements from the university where they said that Dr. Kang Zhang has been suspended, and they later told us that there have actually been multiple audits since 2012, and that led ultimately to his suspension in 2017. But they wouldn't clarify if that meant that they've known for 5 years about problems at UCSD before taking any action.
iNews Source reporter Jill Castellano, thank you so much.
Thank you.
iNews Source is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. Hundreds of firefighters from San Diego and Imperial County are getting ready for the summer wildfire season. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman was there as fire crews trained in East County.
We're here at the Viejas Indian Reservation, and as you can see behind me, there's a number of fire departments here. They're doing a training exercise. Right now, they're going up a hill trying to attack a fire from multiple sides.
You guys got connected? They got connected, you're good.
What crews are going to be doing is simulating a real wildfire incident, such as putting hose on the ground to simulate fighting a fire up a hillside, cutting some brush like they would do in a brush fire, and then also practice some of their tactics and strategies.
We try to take them up over the ridge, and then we've got a section where they turn and actually go downhill, and that should be a red flag for them.
Ground crews also worked with firefighting aircraft.
For this event, it's just helicopters, and they actually are dropping water. And so the personnel, the firefighters on the ground, will actually communicate with the helicopter pilots with radios, just like we would in a real wildfire. Tell them where we want the water dropped. They, in the sky, can tell us where the fire is and what we need to do as well.
Fire officials say training events like this are key.
We bring about 750 firefighters during the 3 days. It's important because this is upcoming wildfire season. We like to kind of knock off the cobwebs, so to say.
We need fixed wing aircraft and also rotary wing helicopters dropping capabilities.
Fire crews had a chance to practice coordinating resources in a scale model of a community.
I want you to try to hold the fire at Valley View Road.
There was a lot of rain this winter, and firefighters are expecting a busy summer season.
What the rain does, it produces that grass crop, and if you drive around San Diego County, you'll see all that tall grass everywhere. And right now it's still green, but we're at the end of the rainy season now. We're going to start to see those grasses starting to cure, starting to brown up. And what we're going to see early in this fire season is starting to get those grass fires, like in early June, July.
Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
This was the 17th annual Wildland Fire Preparedness Exercise, which wraps up tomorrow. Well, warmer temperatures are on the way. Meteorologist Dajia Swad has tonight's forecast.
As we continue through this forecast, main things to note, going to see some temperature drop into the weekend, as well as more clouds as our marine layer deepens. For your current situation, satellite and radar showing clouds out towards our west in the Pacific. We'll continue to see that move inland in the next 24 hours or so. Now for tonight, still looking at some moonlit skies out there with a low of 60 in San Diego, cooling down to 51 in Oceanside and 63 in Borrego Springs, 47 in Mount Laguna. We will continue to notice clouds being a bit more present as we head into your Friday and really Friday night and into the weekend. Now, as we talk about temperatures, still going to be lots of warm air in place as you head into the inland areas. We'll start to notice a slight cool down near the coast, topping off in the lower 70s in Oceanside and San Diego. 97 in Borrego Springs and 70 in Mount Laguna for your Friday highs. We move into your weekend. Easter Sunday is what we're taking a look at currently. And wet weather, not in our area. You're going to see some wet weather from the Rockies extending across the plains. Also seeing some of that in towards the northeast. But here at home, our main concern will be that marine layer deepening into Friday night and continuing to see those low clouds fill in near the coast Saturday and Sunday, with highs no longer in the 70s but into the 60s. We'll be in the upper 60s on Monday with partial sunshine and then more sun as high pressure builds in on Tuesday. You're going to see that same pattern inland. So we're going to get a cool down as well and a bit more cloud cover coming into your area Saturday and Sunday. Not as warm Saturday with a high of 71 and then into the 60s on Sunday. So don't forget that light jacket, but temperatures warm right back up as we head into your Monday and Tuesday. Slightly cooler for the deserts, but you're still holding onto that warmth and lots of sunshine Saturday with a high of 88, returning to the 90s by Monday and Tuesday. And if you're into the mountains, you'll notice that cool down for sure. Friday, a high of 70. Saturday, a high of 61. And then Sunday, only looking at a high of 54. Cooler conditions with some clouds mixing in with sun. High pressure builds back in for the early week, and temperatures will also rise as that high pressure builds back in. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your meteorologist, Dajia Swad. Back to you.
So this Easter Sunday marks 9 years since an earthquake was felt in Southern California. In Mexicali, there was a lot of damage after that 7.2 earthquake happened almost a decade ago. But as we close in on a decade, a new study shows that we are in an earthquake drought. And here to talk about what an earthquake drought is paleoseismologist Dr. Thomas Rockwell. Dr. Rockwell, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So researchers from the U.S. Geological Survey say there have been no major ground rupturing earthquakes along these three key faults over the past 100 years. Why is that significant?
So almost all of the motion between the Pacific and North American plates, which is almost 50 millimeters a year, occurs on the faults of the San Andreas system. And principally in Southern California, that's the San Andreas, the San Jacinto, and Elsinore faults. And in Northern California, it's the San Andreas, the Calaveras, the Concord, the Macama, the Rogers Creek. There's a whole system of faults up there as well. And in the past 100 years, none of these faults have ruptured in a large earthquake. Whereas in the previous 1,000 years, there had not been a period of 100 years when one of these faults has not ruptured.
Well, so given the passage of time, then, is it fair and accurate to say that we're overdue for a large earthquake?
We don't like to say overdue, but to show you how bad it is or why we're so concerned, I'm sure you've heard people talk about the San Andreas is overdue or due for an earthquake. Right. So from dating past earthquakes, from the geology that we do, we know that the average recurrent interval, the average time between large earthquakes on the southernmost San Andreas is about 180 years. It's now been 300 years since the last large earthquake. So this has led to the idea that maybe we're overdue, but there's caveats to that. In any case, it's very clear that the southern San Andreas is certainly ripe for a large earthquake, and the question is, why hasn't it happened? And then, why hasn't a large earthquake occurred on the San Jacinto? We've had moderate earthquakes. Some people may remember earthquakes on the southern San Jacinto Fault in 1968. There was an earthquake on the Imperial Fault in 1979. So there have been some earthquakes, but they release so little energy. It's the big ones that really release most of the energy, and those are the ones we're worried about.
So which fault line should be of the greatest concern for those living in San Diego?
Well, for San Diego, it's the Rose Canyon Fault, no question. But from our recent studies, and we just had a paper come out in the last few weeks, the Rose Canyon Fault only produces these relatively large earthquakes in the high magnitude 6s about every 600 to 800 years. And the last one was just pre-mission, so in the last 300 years. So it's one that that's not one that we say is overdue by any account. On the other hand, a strong earthquake on one of the offshore faults or the Elsinore would certainly produce strong shaking in San Diego. The one we're really worried about is the San Andreas, and I'm not so worried in San Diego for the San Andreas Fault. That one, if it ruptures from south to north, modeling studies have shown it does a tremendous amount of damage in Los Angeles. So that's the main concern, because that's where the main population center is.
Are you okay? San Francisco, Sacramento. Yeah, but I can't get home. Los Angeles. The bridge fell down.
You know, I remember the Bay Area earthquake, seeing that on television. I was living, back home in St. Louis, Missouri, and shortly after that happened, we had someone come through who predicted that there would be a major earthquake in Missouri, and there were all of these measures taken to secure school buildings and school desks and things like that. Is there really a way to predict when an earthquake will happen?
No, we cannot predict earthquakes. And in terms of prediction, we're talking short-term prediction. What we do is we study the past history of earthquakes on a fault. And then based on the statistics, we forecast the probability or the likelihood of an earthquake occurring in, say, a 30 or 50-year window. Even the Rose Canyon Fault, we say, it just had a big earthquake a few hundred years ago, but it could still have a magnitude 6 at any time. And we had one in San Diego historically in 1862. And we didn't have a newspaper at the time. We didn't have KPBS, but it was called the Day of Terror in the Los Angeles Star. So it was about a magnitude 6, and it ruptured in the Old Town area. We know that from the work we've done in Old Town. We found the displacement from that earthquake at the surface, and it faults historical deposits. So a 6 at any time would still do a lot of damage in San Diego.
I've been speaking with Dr. Thomas Rockwell, a paleoseismologist at SDSU. Dr. Rockwell, thank you very much.
It's been my pleasure.
A San Diego-based defense contractor has created an aircraft capable of flying with or without a pilot. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson shows us why it's so special.
The Firebird can fly at 25,000 feet, and the craft can carry out a wide variety of surveillance missions for firefighters, police, or the military. Kristen Griffin works with Northrop Grumman in San Diego. She says the Firebird's strength is its flexibility.
This is not an unmanned aircraft. It's not a manned aircraft. It's both. And it's going to change how people think about what kinds of operations they can do with aircraft and how they can use the sensors on those aircraft.
Griffin says the onboard sensors can also be changed quickly. The company says 3 aircraft are already being flight tested, and there are customers that are ready to buy. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
The Museum of Beer is not a reality yet, but organizers have sights set on a location in San Diego's East Village. Tonight, people get a sneak peek of what's to come at the museum's launch party. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando is with the people behind the Museum of Beer. Beth?
Hi, I'm here at Courtyard where there is the launch party for the Museum of Beer. Now, whenever you mention a Museum of Beer, people get very excited. So I have Anthony Reidenhauer, who is the CEO of the Museum of Beer. It's not actually a physical reality yet. So where are you in the plans so far?
So we've spent the last 2 years getting the right community partners together, talking to brewers, talking to the civic leaders to make sure that this is something that the community really wants. And now we've finally done all of that work, 2 years of that work, and we feel that it's appropriate to launch and tell everybody this is happening. And so we're looking at a target date of summer 2020 to open the museum. And we've got a few spaces we're looking at in East Village. So once we nail that down, we'll be able to announce the location, and it'll give you all a better idea of when we're actually going to open.
So are there a lot of local breweries that are going to be on board for this museum?
Absolutely. We're working with the San Diego Brewers Guild. We're an affiliate member of the San Diego Brewers Guild. So all of the members that are San Diego Brewers Guild members will be able to be a part of our museum.
All right. So the person who has probably the most interesting title here is Bruce Glassman, who is the Curator of Craft. So what does the Curator of Craft do at the Museum of Beer?
Well, the Curator of Craft does a lot of different things. I'm going to help develop actually the content of the exhibits, working with Anthony and a bunch of our advisors, but I'm also going to curate all of the sensory and tasting experiences that our guests will have. I'm going to curate the tap list in our tasting room, which is going to have 65 exclusively San Diego beers in it. And we're also going to have a tasting and a sensory component as part of the museum experience for the guests who come. So I'll be doing all of that stuff.
So what other things can people expect going to a Museum of Beer here?
it's really going to cover the entire universe of beer. We're going to have 8 core exhibits that'll cover the science of beer, how beer is made, all the different styles, where they come from around the world. We're going to have a special exhibit on San Diego craft beer history, especially. Virtual reality type exhibit where you can be the brewer and feel what it's like to be up on a brew house and make those decisions brewing a beer. And there are going to be a lot of supporting exhibits as well that will be like highly interactive, immersive exhibits, high tech, some virtual reality stuff, and some really cool cutting edge technology stuff. And then we'll also just have a bunch of fun Instagram playground kind of things too. So a little bit of something for everybody.
And when you say everybody, this can be for people who know nothing about beer and also people who are well versed in it?
Exactly. Yeah, what we want is everybody who comes to San Diego to leave here with some kind of an inspirational beer experience, whether you're a novice and this is where you taste your first craft beer, or you're an experienced hophead and you fall in love with a double IPA from a place you've never heard of before but you found here. Whatever the experience, the inspirational beer experience, we want it to happen here in San Diego, and we want it to happen at the Museum of Beer.
And I also have the Director of Development here, Mike Cosiella. So this is the launch party, but you're also launching a fundraising campaign.
Yeah, you know, this is a humongous project, and it's going to take a village, East Village, get it? Anyway, to build this museum. And so we launched a couple weeks ago an Indiegogo platform, and we just, as of a couple minutes ago, crossed the 10,000 mark, which is awesome. So we got another 45 days left in the campaign, and it really is just to help round out the funding for the museum.
Okay, great. So the Museum of Beer is not here yet, but it will be here summer of 2020, hopefully here in East Village. I'm Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Thanks, Beth. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.